in denial. They think that so long as they don't buy cigarettes, they're not actually smokers. These are the people that will just smoke your cigarettes. Yeah? These are the people that don't have many friends left, I don't think. I mean, isn't it odd, though, how many of these so-called casual smokers, if you put them in a situation where they can smoke more, they match you cigarette for cigarette half the time. The genuine casual smoker, the guy smoking literally a couple of cigarettes a year maybe, actually is really a non-smoker who thinks they might be missing out on something. So a couple of times a year, usually under the influence of alcohol, they try to smoke. The cigarette is absolutely disgusting. It makes them dizzy. It makes them nauseous. It makes them cough and splutter. But at the next New Year's Eve party, they'll have a couple of drinks. They'll see someone smoking and they'll think, let's do that again. And the same thing will happen. And this just really reinforces their decision not to smoke. In fact, they end up kind of baffled by the whole thing. They just get mystified as to how anyone could get addicted to something like this. But of course, this is how most of us started, and we know where that story ended up. The other point that we seem to miss when we're thinking about these lighter or what we perceive to be casual smokers is that many of them are using quite large amounts of willpower not to smoke more. I mean, in a sense, this means that they have the worst of both worlds, not the best. On the one hand, they're having to use willpower as if they were quitting smoking, but on the other hand, they don't even get to be non-smokers. They're still smoking. The next time you get an opportunity to watch people smoke, watch them. I mean, the most obvious thing that you will see is that there is no pleasure involved. I mean, whenever I'm in New York City, I walk up and down Fifth Avenue, and as I do, I walk past literally dozens of individual smokers. I mean, it's not like there's a big group of smokers and there's a real party atmosphere going on, everyone's having a great time. Mostly, smokers are just by themselves as individuals, gazing kind of glumly into the middle distance, doing their drug. They look bored and, in a New York winter, bitterly cold. Just so they can all do it again in an hour's time, and again, and again, and again, never being allowed to quit. The best people to watch, the best places, to watch people smoke is at parties. Because this is when they're smoking, but they're not really aware of their smoking. Imagine you kind of have X-ray vision, and you can see the smoke going into their lungs. And as the nicotine is absorbed through the lining of the lungs into their bloodstream, where it makes its way via the heart to the brain, where it attacks the central nervous system, making them feel anxious and edgy. And at the same time, it robs their body, the cigarette robs their body of oxygen and other nutrients, making them feel sluggish and lethargic. And the toxins contained in tobacco smoke attack the immune system, compromising its ability to fight off other diseases and conditions. Then when they put that cigarette out, visualize the nicotine leaving their body, being replaced by this very slightly empty feeling in the pit of your stomach, very similar to hunger. This sends a message to the brain that he needs to smoke again. So he lights up, he fires up another. And as soon as he puts that out, the nicotine begins to leave his body. So he gets this empty feeling again. So he has to light a third cigarette, and a fourth cigarette, and a fifth cigarette, and a sixth. And all the time you're watching this, ask yourself, for what? So he can remove this feeling, and by removing this feeling, he temporarily gets to feel like a non-smoker. But by smoking to remove this feeling, all he's really doing is guaranteeing it'll keep coming back. And as you're watching this process of withdrawal, replenishment, ask yourself, is it worth it? Is it worth going through the rest of my life addicted to a drug that doesn't even get me high, just so I can temporarily feel like someone that doesn't do the drug? It doesn't make any sense. Smoking doesn't make any sense. None of us chose to become smokers for life. And had we known that our first cigarettes as youngsters would put us in this situation all these years later, we never would have smoked them. You may have chosen to light that first experimental cigarette, but you certainly did not decide to be a smoker for the rest of your life. Paying through the nose for the privilege of being controlled and destroyed by a drug that doesn't even get you high. I mean, do you really think that other smokers feel so very differently to you? When you see people smoke, you have to get it crystal clear in your mind. They aren't smoking because they want to. They're smoking because they have to. They're not smoking because they want to relax or because they want to relieve some stress. They're smoking because they don't know how to stop. They're smoking because they're a drug addict. The reality is that if they knew how to stop smoking, they would do it in a heartbeat. Do you envy drug addicts? I mean, of course not. We live in a compassionate society where we see these guys and we wonder what has happened in their lives that has pulled them down this path. We don't feel envious. We feel terrible for these guys. Well, I'll tell you something. It's not crack that's killing 500,000 North Americans across the continent every year. It's your drug. It's not crystal meth that's killing 4 million people across the world every year. It's your drug. You know, when I was a smoker, like every other smoker, I think, deep down I always knew I would be so much better off as a non-smoker. But you see, I always sensed that I'd have to go through the rest of my life feeling deprived. And to be honest with you, I'm afraid I just don't do deprivation very well at all. And then it hit me. It's not non-smokers who are deprived. It's smokers who are deprived. Think about it. Smokers are deprived of their time, their energy, their money, their relationships, their self-respect, their self-esteem, and their freedom. Smokers are deprived of all of these things, not non-smokers. Non-smokers have these things. As soon as I understood this very simple point, I realized that I could be a non-smoker and not feel deprived. And as soon as I knew that, I knew I could be a happy non-smoker. And as soon as I knew that, I grabbed it with both hands. And I have never, ever, ever let it go. And I strongly recommend that you do exactly the same. Because like any other addiction, this doesn't get better. It just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. And just when you don't think it can get any worse, it gets worse. You find yourself sitting in some doctor's office somewhere. And he says to you, look, I'm really sorry, but I got bad news. And then what do you do? Then what do you go home and tell your family? That you're sorry? It's not good enough. It's nowhere near good enough. Instead, take this opportunity to break free. By watching this seminar, you have worked yourself into a situation where for the first time in a long time, you have choice, genuine choice. Use this choice to trade in this life of fear and anxiety and stress and slavery and trade it in for a life of health and happiness and freedom. In a moment, it will be time to smoke a final cigarette. But before you do that, I just want to share a couple of final thoughts. Most people at this point of the seminar are kind of a little unsure as to quite how they feel at the moment. There is no right or wrong way to feel at this point or any other point. Some people are champing at the bit to get on with their smoke-free life. Others feel a little bit anxious. Like I said, there's no right or wrong way to feel. The only reason that we really ask people to smoke a final cigarette is not because I feel that you necessarily want or need one. It's to provide closure. It's to draw a line in the sand. It's to say to yourself, this is the last time I am ever going to have to put myself through this. From this point on, I can begin to focus on how to be a happy non-smoker. Now, if you're feeling any fear or anxiety, then you need to understand that the only other option that you have to quitting smoking is to keep smoking. To keep smoking all day, every day, for the rest of your life, feeling like this or worse. It's the only other option on the table, and it's no good. It's nowhere near good enough. Instead, spin this thing around. I mean, think how amazing it will be never to have to stick one of these things in your mouth again. Imagine the freedom to go wherever you want to go, do whatever you want to do, see whoever you want to see, without constantly having to factor in your need to smoke. These are amazing gifts that you're earning for yourselves here today. The gift of a fuller, happier life and the gift of true freedom. Why not give yourself permission to celebrate? So when you go out to smoke that final cigarette, you need to make a solemn vow, a commitment to yourself. This is the last time you will ever have to do this drug. Now, up until now, I have given you a total of 9 instructions, the 9th of which was to write down what it felt like to be a slave to nicotine. And as soon as you should write that list as soon as you complete this seminar. Now, you can forget the other instructions. They were really just for use as we were going through the session. Now, I said earlier that there are really only 3 essentials to finding it easy to quit smoking. And when I say easy, I mean ridiculously easy. The first is to realize that there's nothing to give up. The whole thing was a scam. If there were any genuine benefits to smoking, they'd be plastered all over the pack, or you could give these guys a call and they'd describe them to you. There is literally nothing to give up, apart from some illusions that you were sold, mostly as a very young child. And illusions which really appeared to be confirmed when your brain got tricked into seeing the alleviation of withdrawal symptoms as genuine pleasure. Now, the second essential to finding it easy is to realize that while physical withdrawal from nicotine does exist, it's like this. It is absolutely minuscule. The truth is, when you're a smoker, you slept through physical withdrawal from nicotine every single night when you went to sleep. And it was so mild that it didn't even wake you up. So if physical withdrawal from nicotine didn't bother you as a smoker, why on earth would it bother you as a non-smoker? In any case, you are 100% nicotine-free after 3 days. In fact, after just an hour of not smoking, your body's already 75% nicotine-free. This is over. And that's the third essential to finding it easy to quit, is to realize the second you put out that final cigarette, you're a non-smoker. This is finished. The only challenge that you have left is to be happy about that decision. And that's what part 6 of this session is for. Now, I would like you to start smoking your final cigarette. I'll see you again in part 6.